Welcome to The Art of Being Unstoppable, the podcast where women from every walk of life come together to break barriers, embrace their power, and live life on their own terms. I'm your host, Vicki McDougall, and each week we explore inspiring stories, actionable strategies, and empowering conversations to help you step into your confidence, amplify your voice, and create a life without limits. No matter where you are on your journey, this is your space to grow, thrive, and become unstoppable. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Art of Being Unstoppable. And yes, this familiar face that you're seeing and this voice that you're going to hear is one that is very familiar for all of you. This is the fabulous Tina Brigley, one of my very dear friends and coach and speaker but she is back today because we are doing a special extra episodes for May this month, because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and mental health affects all of us, some in larger ways than others, but I think mental health affects everyone that I know. It affects everyone in the world, whether it is you're in your good mental health or whether you know someone that has mental health issues. Whatever that looks like for you, please listen to this episode, because we're hoping that we can share some insights on mental health and the effects that it has on the ones that we love and ourselves. So thank you for coming back, Tina.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited
I'm so happy
and
you're
a
here.
little worried, because this is a vulnerable topic. We don't always want to shed light on the things that are going on behind the scenes, and especially when it comes to our mental health, and especially when we're in this personal development space and we do a lot of work. It's almost like, oh my gosh, how can I be struggling with these things when I have so many tools? But I think it's really important to have the discussion because, like you said, we're not immune to it. And I
Oh,
think the more we can take the stigma away, we can see we're all living a human experience. And sometimes that human experience is heavy and it weighs on our emotions. And so we're not alone.
no, we're not alone. We're not alone. And I think that is one of the things with this podcast that I reiterate quite often is that no one should be alone. We're all in this together,
Yes.
and there is help out there for those seeking help. You just have to ask. And it isn't a hard, it is a hard thing to ask, but it isn't something that there isn't help out there for, because I know for myself, I'll share a little bit. I've always struggled since probably, I'm going to say the early 90s. I struggled with depression and not anxiety, I wouldn't say, but depression. And it would be, yes, everything was going great. And I always used to make this joke that after my ex-husband and I split up, that, my depression was over, I was happy and all that. But that wasn't the truth. It was
Yeah.
something that I chose to say to myself to, again, put the blame over to somebody else and not really discover what was going on inside of me. Um, I do take, I always call it my happy pill. I do take one on a daily basis, and it is to regulate the chemical imbalance that I have, and that's okay. But I also know that grief triggers it. I know that, um, there are a lot of triggers that can send me into that place of wanting to just sit on the couch and not talk to anybody, or,
Hmm.
you know, go to bed at 7 o'clock at night because I just don't want to deal with, the issues. And even if there are no issues, it's the issues that are within inside me that I don't know how to deal with. And you're right. I think personal development can be that double-edged sword when it comes to realizing, because I know the ways to do things. I have the tools. But when you get into that place, sometimes those tools, they just don't work.
Yeah, and I really truly I see the word even depression, right? Depression means to cut off pressure. And I think sometimes in life, there are a lot of pressures to keep up, pressures to perform, pressures to be a good mom, a good wife, a good partner, a good business owner. and we're surrounded by things, stimulation all the time. And I think sometimes our body, our brains are just on overload. And
Yes.
so it's we're trying to regulate our system, and how people do that sometimes is, drink the wine, have
Yeah.
the drink, the out whatever to calm our nervous system. And sometimes that exasperates the problem, but we're not used to having all of these strong feelings and emotions. So I do sometimes think that depression is our body's way of forcing us to slow down, but we've been programmed to believe that that's not okay. If I
Yeah.
want to go to bed at 7 o'clock, there's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with
Mhm.
me. No, I think sometimes there's something wrong with the world that we're living in, and we're not wired to be on overdrive 24/7. And
No.
so I think we put all this pressure on ourselves instead of, let's just be real with what is actually happening.
And I think that that is what exactly what you said. Let's be real with what's actually happening. But so often, I know for myself, I don't want to face what's actually happening because then I feel like it just adds to the plate of what I already have to do. Right? That
Mhm.
was my old way of thinking. And it comes
Yeah.
back up quite frequently when I do feel myself slipping into that place because I'm working so hard. Why am I not getting the followers? Or, right, your business, we're entrepreneurs. We're starting it. We're creating a business. We're working. We're doing all these things. And then when we don't see that result, right, we don't see it. And we're like, well, what? But the result is there. We just expect it to be this, this, and this. And that's where the expectation comes in, which then it spirals back to I'm not good enough. I can't do this.
Mhm.
I'm not worthy.
Mhm.
Why would people want to listen to me if I'm depressed?
And I do believe that those thoughts, those feelings, it's the negative energy. And I do believe in negative and positive,
Yeah.
the light and the darkness. And whenever I'm feeling that overwhelming sense of pressure, the first thing I say is, okay, I'm sitting in the darkness right now, but I know on the other side of the darkness, the light is always trying to be revealed. There's something in this that I'm supposed to see for myself. And that's how I overcome. I start really, first of all, I see that I'm not alone. You know what I mean? We have
That's
so
right.
many
Yeah.
people in our lives. We have God. If you have your faith, you have your friends, there are people here, but sometimes we just need to be with it
Yeah.
and be okay, not try and force it, not try and change it. And I know right after Easter, it was Easter Monday, I could not shake the heaviness around me. It was like I was starting to question if these thoughts are even my own. It was getting to the place of very like dark feelings and emotions. What am I even doing here? What's the purpose of life? I
Yeah.
mean, stuff that I've never actually even thought in, like dark
Yeah.
thoughts almost. I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I need to go for a walk. I need to shake this off. I need to take a bubble bath. I need and what I realize is no, you just got to let the thoughts come and let them go. Got to be with it and trust the process. But the
Uh-huh.
problem is sometimes we stay in that dark place for days, weeks,
Yes.
months, years. And so I realize, okay, this is how I'm feeling, but what do I need to do to shake that feeling away? And this is where it gets really tricky sometimes, right? Because people think, I can just figure this out on my own. I can just deal with it on my own. This too shall pass. But if it's going on for a little bit longer, we got to look at,
Yeah.
is there a chemical imbalance right
Mhm.
now? Is there an overload right now? Is there something else with hormones? With, we're premenopausal.
Yes.
There's all of these things. We got to
Yeah.
get to the source of where is this coming from, and do our due diligence and be responsible for making sure we don't stay in that place forever. We got to
Yeah.
get out
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. And it isn't just like, and it's not easy. And that's definitely not what I mean or what you mean. What I find is when I get in that place, I do allow myself, I give myself X amount of time. I say to myself, okay, Vicky, you can let's not, and I'm not saying I give myself, you have one day to figure this out. I'm not saying that, but I give myself the grace and the time, and I allow myself to feel my feelings. I do a lot of journaling in that time, more than normal. I try to, again, self care, look within,
Mm.
ask myself certain questions of, why are you feeling this way? Or is it because of something? I ask myself a lot of questions that only I can answer. And that has
Mhm.
really helped me in seeing where it's coming from. And when I understand, I'm a very much, ever since I was very small, I needed to understand why this was happening. Like if I was going to the dentist, you're not touching me until you explain to me why you have to do this. I needed to understand the steps. And I haven't really changed in that sense in a lot of ways, that I need to understand the steps of what's going on. So I ask myself certain questions, and I know what I need to reflect back for myself. And I also know that I am still okay. I am still the person. I'm still perfect. I'm whole and I'm complete. I am not broken. I am just going through something that I need to go through.
Mhm.
That's all. So
Mhm.
feeling the feels and doing all that, because I learned really when after my parents passed, I learned you don't not feel the feels, because guess what? It's going to be like a tidal wave when you start to feel them. If you don't allow
Yeah.
yourself to feel them, that wave of emotion is going to hit so hard that it's almost like it knocks you over and you don't know if you're ever going to get back up again.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people that feel that too, but they attach a lot of shame and guilt to feeling
Yeah.
that way, and I think
Yes,
that's what we're not talking about is, I mean, if you feel that you're alone, chances are if you talked about it, if you opened up, you would realize you're really not, and I know when I talk about it and people say, "You feel those ways? Do you feel
exactly.
those thoughts?" Even you people say, "What? You
Yeah,
feel that? You
yeah.
Yes, because it's just
It's
being
human.
real.
It is. It's a human like we have to understand that no one is invincible and no one can not have a down day, a down hour, a down time, a down minute, whatever that looks like. Everyone has them. So if we can make it again more normal, because talking about it, people need to hear that. The people that don't feel that way. And I think in society now we're going back to kids like my grandkids are 7 years old. They shouldn't have anxiety about little things that are so simple, that they're so innocent. They don't know what could happen. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's going,
Yeah.
they're getting younger and younger and younger. And I have to ask myself, why? Why is that? Why is that so? Why is it that these little young children are feeling these feelings of anxiety and depression and these things at such a young age?
I think because 'cause we're disconnected. I would think as a society, we're becoming
Mhm.
it looks like we're more connected because
Yeah,
we have this world wide web and we have, information at our fingertips. But I think that the things that are designed to get us closer together are actually disconnecting us. And
I
I
don't
think
disagree
that
with
we
that
need
at
to
all.
see that. Well, I think we just need to see it. When
Yeah,
you're sitting you go to a restaurant, I know you and I have talked about this before, you look around, there's people on dates that are on their phone, there are families eating together on iPads and technology, and it's like, "Okay, what the hell is going on?" And then we
yes,
wonder why we feel these feelings of depression and anxiety. It's, for me, I think it I can see it. I know when I'm starting to feel like that, I ask myself the question, where in my life am I feeling disconnected? Oh,
mhm,
I've been trying so hard to grow the business and I haven't been out with my friends. I haven't gone on vacation. I haven't gone out in nature. I pretty much stayed home the whole entire winter, not going outside, not getting fresh air, just
yes,
plugged in. And I think that even just plugging in, uh, creates a lot of I don't wanna say, like, toxics or chemicals or whatever, I don't even know, but I just feel that I don't know about other people, but me, when I actually looked at the source of how why I was feeling so depressed, it's like, "When was the last time you went outside? When was the last time you got fresh air? When was the last time you actually, got your ass to the gym?" Like, "Oh my god." Okay, well,
Yeah.
you can't ignore those things that are
Right?
actually going to
Mm-mm.
release serotonin and oxytocin and all of these chemicals, these feel good pleasures. I'm like, no
Yes.
wonder, you know?
Yeah. And it
So,
is. It's we can there are certain things that do help when we get into that place, and I think that we get if we don't have the support, sometimes we forget because we're not seeing any of that, like you said earlier. You get into that place, but you know better, so you do go for a walk, you have a bubble bath, it's self-care, self-love. And I do think too, not knowing what self-love, how important self-love is, when we get to that point of um, shame and guilt, we're in such a low frequency and a low vibration. We're so, so low that to try and get back up to where we normally sit seems to be the impossible chore to do.
mhm, mhm.
And it isn't. And it
No,
isn't
no.
impossible. And I mean, okay, so we wanted to talk about mental health, and this is just a daily basis thing that we go through like everyone else. And but let's talk a little bit about where it comes from in our families as well. Because I think it's important for people to understand that these labels that were put on, like, oh, you take medicine for depression, you aren't, how can you help someone that has that if you can't even help yourself? There are ways of helping yourself. Medicine is one, counseling, therapy, um, coaching. There are so many self-help books. There's so much out there. But what about years ago when no one really understood things? Like you and I have talked about this on the podcast before, but I'd really like to do a little bit of a deeper dive into you sharing about your dad. And your dad had mental health issues and how it kind of affected you and how it affected him and what you see now that you didn't see then.
Yeah, I mean, my dad had a lot of repressed trauma, and he was always going to counselors, to therapists, from what I can remember at a very young age. But then it kind of hit a boiling point when my parents separated. It was almost like the one thing that kind of was like the glue holding my dad together. This false sense of security was gone, his family.
Yeah.
And I remember there was almost this transition from the happy-go-lucky, and my mom knew that he always struggled with this, but it was kind of a little bit more hidden from us. But then when my mom and dad separated and I lived with my dad, then I could see what my mom was dealing with most of their marriage, right? And at first, the depression was really severe, to the point where, he ended up in the psychiatric hospital so many times because he couldn't pull himself out. And then it led to getting more medication and not the medication seemed to not work anymore. And then the mental health got even more progressive, from depression to bipolar disorder to finally they said he had schizophrenia because he was delusional. And, at the time, I thought I didn't know a lot about it, but I took psychology to learn about abnormal behavior and stuff like that. And I always wanted to learn about it because I thought, what is going on with my dad? And more importantly, I was like, "W how can I avoid getting whatever he has? Like, what is
Mhm.
happening?" It was almost like I was running away from mental health problems and wanting to learn about it so that never became me. But I also know my dad was very deep. He was very intuitive. He had a lot of things that he knew things before I even knew things in my life. And then often wondered in hindsight, did he actually have gifts? Was he very intuitive? Was he kind of psychic? When he talked about hearing these things, there have been times in my life where I could hear things very clearly as if somebody were in the room with me, and I questioned my sanity. And so I thought, I know I can go to the internet, I can go to my communities. People are there supporting me saying, "Oh, you're having divine inspiration. You're having
Yeah.
downloads. You're getting messages. You're getting dreams that are very." They're supporting me, but could you
Uh-huh.
imagine on the other side if there were people there saying, "You're crazy. What's
Yeah.
wrong with you? Like, that's
Yeah.
not normal. You're hearing
Yeah.
things. Here's a pill. Let's stop making you hear things." So, it uh, I have such strong views and opinions on mental health, but I'm not a doctor. I don't diagnose. I just have an opinion and a view. But I do think that people that experience extreme darkness, I believe that maybe they actually have a gift or maybe they have a purpose that's bigger than what they can see. And all of that darkness is trying to reveal the light. And I talked about this earlier, but it's like, what if my dad was supposed to experience extreme darkness? Because whatever gift he had to give to the world, he had to see that. He had to learn from it. He had to grow from it. But he didn't have the tools to be able to do that. So he stayed exactly where he was stuck. And I think for me, it's like, what if we could reframe the way we see mental health? What if we could see that maybe it is part of our spiritual path? And maybe the trauma and the things that we've experienced, they happen to us because we're supposed to learn and grow and help others, share with
Mhm.
others to make the world a better place. But if we don't have these conversations, how do we ever know that? We sit there in our own struggles thinking that we're not like the rest of the world, that we're somehow broken or we can't figure it out. But I've met so many people with extreme trauma, with extreme depression and anxiety that are brilliant people
Mhm.
that
Yep.
have so much light to give
Mhm.
that they don't even know how to contain it. You know,
Yep.
they don't know how to process. And so, growing up, it was challenging. I used to say to myself, or to, people would say, you have so much empathy and you're such an empath. And I said, be careful with that because what does that actually mean when you feel things so strongly? It's because at a very young age, I learned how to read the room to keep myself safe. I learned how to read people's energy before they became volatile. I knew how to walk and how to approach things without rocking the boat. People say, oh, I'm such an empath. If you look at people that identify as being empaths, I bet the common thread is that they had parents that were addicts, parents that were alcoholics,
Mhm.
parents that were volatile, parents that were unstable a lot of times, and they learned to to be hyper vigilant, to read the room, read
Mhm.
energy. But I also believe in we choose our parents to help us unlock those gifts. We needed those people in our life to access maybe that superpower. So,
Mhm.
but we got to be clear about where it came from. We were supposed to experience those things, to give
Right.
this empathy, to see this, to give it to the world. Um, but a lot of times I know I hid that. I was like, oh, I don't want to tell people like how my dad used to call me all the time saying things like, "There's aliens in your backyard, and the aliens are coming to Earth," and, I mean, really bizarre things, but he was just having psychotic breaks. But I didn't know every time the phone rang, what version am I gonna get? Am I gonna get the
Right.
sane one or the insane one, the healthy one or the not healthy one? So I had to self-regulate. I had to be a different version in order to really be with something like that. And I know that it helps me now later on in life because it doesn't
Mhm.
matter what you throw at me. I'm like, throw all your crazy at me. I can handle it. Well, I think
Yep.
God gave me that superpower because I do hold space for hundreds of people sometimes. So I
Yeah.
needed that in order to be able to expand enough. And
Yep.
that's what people don't see. It's not a trauma, it's preparation. That's
Mhm.
how I see it. We're being
Yep.
prepared.
Yep. And that came with a lot of work. for yourself to get to where you are to see it that way because, a lot of people, a lot of us go and they blame. I am that way because of what's happened to me, because my parents weren't stable, because of this, and this. But again, if we look at it like you just shared, this is preparing us for something bigger. And I truly do. I believe that. I've really started to look at my saboteurs and where I fall short in my way
Mhm.
of being. And it's been quite eye opening for me to see what from my past has come into my future that I didn't even see before. And what
Mhm.
lesson do I get to learn from that? And, I know that, when I was young, I was probably 14 and my parents split up. And my mom went through a really dark time. She didn't get up in the mornings when to I was 14, I was going to high school, but she didn't get up in the mornings with me, which she always had because my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So we spent, mornings and after schools together every day. And she didn't do any of that. And she basically was, in her room. And I remember then she went for counseling and then she brought me to this counselor and she wanted me to talk. Well, I wouldn't. I
Mm.
didn't say a word, I sat there. There was no understanding of why I was even there. I didn't know how I felt. I just knew I was
Mhm.
angry because my mom was so sad. I didn't
Mm.
know what I was feeling. That anger was
Right.
masking everything else,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
Because she was so depressed, she was so down, she was so in this place of she didn't wanna be here anymore, and I look back now and I think, "Wow," what she endured that I never knew and she never really talked about. I just saw her sad and angry and
Mm.
sad and sad and
Mm.
sadder, and to see that and to know that because that was like, okay, I was 14 years old. So that was like 40 some years ago. And it wasn't a thing that I even understood. I didn't know what mental health was back then at all. I had a friend who her dad was schizophrenic, and that's the only thing I knew about mental health was schizophrenia,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And he was the funniest. He was great. He was this great guy. He was fun. He was because I never saw the other side of it. Right. So we're
Yeah.
only taught what we're taught. We get to learn more if we choose to. And I think mental health is something people get to be more aware of instead of looking at those poor people that have addictions, that have, are homeless. We don't know why. We don't know why anybody is going through what they're going through, but if we can have a little bit of compassion and love for them going through what they're going through, I'm sure that they didn't choose it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how you said like a little bit more love because I was at this community church a couple weeks ago, and there was a guest speaker, and he was talking about that term love. And he's like, when you have kids, you love your kids, but can you love the kids of the world the same as you love
Yes.
your own kids? And they're like, people were saying yes. And it's like, no, because you have ownership over that. Would you, throw yourself on a sword for other people's kids. Like, no, I love them, but not that much. But really, if we can have love for humanity and see that we're all living a human experience, and whether it's that person on the streets experiencing homelessness or somebody who's experiencing addictions, there's always a story behind what people are going through. There's always something, another layer of depth and usually trauma. And
Yeah.
and maybe just seeing that we're all humans living a human experience and giving people more love and connection in such a disconnected world is maybe the one thing that's going to have them take a different action or believe in themselves or love themselves or see that I'm worthy of love. And we can never undermine the power of love and
Yeah.
sharing that love even with humans that really we have no connection to. I
Yeah.
have a friend who said, "Listen, if I walk down the street and see somebody experiencing homelessness, I'm gonna give them a hug. I'm gonna probably give them money, and I'm gonna tell them that God loves them. And that, and I was like, wow, that's, it's like, yeah, I mean, I see this all the time, but who
Mhm.
knows if that one word or that one statement or that one act of kindness is going to be the catalyst for somebody to be willing to take a new action. We don't know, but we got to just trust um, that I always think too, like I think about Jesus and me and Vicky joke all the time, like, what would Jesus do? But I'm like, imagine if Jesus was that person experiencing homelessness on the street and we showed love and then we like get a spot in heaven or something like, I saw you the way you treated everybody.
Yes,
Like I always
yes.
think about that in my head, you don't know.
It
Because
it
it's
comes back to
easy.
even what you put out into the universe, you get back, right? Like, if
Yeah.
we put out and it's energy, if everything is energy and you're putting out good energy, you're getting good energy back. And if we can just show that little bit of love to those people who maybe don't have it, what does that do? What did that little bit of love that you gave away to somebody, how much time did it take you to say, hey, here's a coffee, or hey, whatever it is, took you nothing out of your day, but it paid forward 10 times fold for that person, right?
Yeah, and how many times do we do that with people that are close to us that we know
Yes.
might be struggling and just pick up the phone and be like, "Hey, I've been thinking about you. How are you? What's been happening?" Just like throwing out an olive branch
Yep.
basically to just say,
Mhm.
"Hey, I see you. I hear you. I'm with you." I don't think we do that either. Sometimes we're afraid of, I don't know if they're in a good place. I don't know if I should reach out. I don't know what to say. It doesn't matter. Let go of the attachment. Just be
Yes.
willing to, if you have a thought, I should reach out, don't let the
Rachel.
thought just be a, a passing thought. Trust that the thought that you have is planted there so that you might be the catalyst. And I was at the storytelling thing last week. I'll make this a very long story short. But years ago, I was waiting for a person. I was meeting them at Tim Hortons, and I was just scrolling on my phone, and I saw this person said, I'm not okay today. And now it would have been easy for me to say, like, oh gosh, like I don't have time to respond to this, or it's not really my place, or I don't know what to say and not do anything. But I said, it's okay to not be okay, but know that there are people that are there to talk to if you're not feeling okay. And that was it. Nothing
Yep.
else. He never responded. But then the next day, I got a call on Facebook Messenger and it was that guy. And so I answered the phone and I was like, hello. And he's like, "Hey, Tina, do you remember me? I was at one of your talks last month." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, of course. How are you doing?" He said, "I'm doing really good. I just called to say thank you." I'm like, "Thank you for what?" And he said, "When I sent that message on social media yesterday, you're the only one that responded." And he said, "I was sitting in my room with bottles of pills. I was ready to take my own life." And he said, "Your message came in, and I thought, this must be a message to me that I'm not through yet." And fast forward, I mean, 7 years later, he's married, he has a son, he has a thriving business, he, battled his demons, so to speak. But imagine if I didn't take the time. The outcome might have been different, and I
Mhm.
would have never known the
Nope.
truth that my one action had an infinite ripple.
Yep.
Because imagine if something would have happened.
Mhm.
His wife would not have experienced his love. He wouldn't have that child. Like, you think about the
Yes.
endless possibilities, and so I'm always saying to people, you never know the power you have in your actions,
Mhm.
positive and negative. But
Yep.
when it comes to mental health and being that person, being that light, sometimes people just need that spark of light in their darkness. And I mean, I've interviewed so many people who have shared when I asked them, like, what was the turning point? Almost everybody said there was one person who came in that was the hero, that said one thing. It was one video, one book, one insight
and hope.
that really had them see a new possibility. That is, we're not the heroes in our story. There's
Oh,
always somebody who comes in. And so let us be heroes in somebody else's story when it comes to mental health. And yeah,
yes,
it takes us time. And yes, it might be inconvenient. And yes, we might risk people saying, I don't need your help. Who cares? Be the
that's
light
right.
in somebody else's darkness.
And I think, Tina, that's something that I think we can almost wrap up the podcast just with that one line that you just said. Be the light in someone else's darkness. Mental health isn't something that is over there with you, over there. Let it be. Let us look at it and share our love. Let us take down this wall and fill that gap with love in between. Even if we don't
Mm,
understand, it's okay. We don't need to understand. We don't need to understand what that
mm.
person's going through, but to show your love is important. And I think I appreciate what you shared about your dad, and even knowing, that whenever I am in that place of, I just don't know what to do. I know I have people. I know that my friend Tina and I have and that few other friends that they call me on a okay, so what's going on? Okay, well, you're not staying home. Let's go out. Let's go for dinner. Let's do this. Let's do that. Yes, because that is the power of us empowering each other and showing our love and sharing it, is because we're not,
Mhm.
no man is going to be alone. Like no one's alone. We have that ability to reach out. We can reach far. Our message can go so far. So if you're listening to this and you think that there is somebody in your life that is struggling with mental health, know that you can be that difference for them. Just that voice, just
Mhm.
to tell them that you love
Uh-huh.
them today.
Mhm. Amen.
So, is there anything, Tina, that you would like to share before we wrap this up for our listeners? And I know that, life can be dark sometimes. And I know that with the darkness comes the light. I do see that. And I really have, that's really been evident in my life and in yours. And I think, if we can share something to the listeners that you think would help them, what would it be?
I would say, no, you are not alone. You are not alone ever. You're never alone. Even if it feels like you're in this experience alone, or you don't have a big community, or you don't have a lot of friends, I promise you, you are never alone. And there are communities out there that can support you. There are people out there that can support you. And you got to be willing to love yourself enough to get exactly what you need, and know that the darkness is probably there because you have a lot of light to give, and it's your responsibility to give that away, to be the voice, to say, I was here and now I'm not, and I can help you too. Whether that's, on a big scale or a little scale, or
Yeah,
just being somebody else's hero. um be be your own hero. Be willing to be real with yourself. Be willing to see it for what it is, and take a new action to get a new result, even when it's really hard, even when you feel like you can't, like it's like a huge mountain to climb. You are so worth it. You are so worth the work. So do not ever give up. Do not give up. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're perfectly whole and complete. And you're not alone.
perfect.
That's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you again, Tina, for being
You're
here. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And I hope that you have the most beautiful day. And we'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this episode of The Art of Being Unstoppable. Remember, your story matters, your voice matters, and your power is limitless. If you love today's conversation, subscribe, share it with the women in your life, and leave a review to help more women discover their unstoppable selves. I'm Vicki McDougall, and I'll see you in the next episode, because your journey to unstoppable starts now.